May be seated. Court is now in session.
Calling Commonwealth versus Brian Walshe.
To make an argument that they were only ever biased against Karen Reed is not logical.
In the other case against the Reed defendant.
The other matter, the Karen Reed case.
The investigation in the Karen Reed case.
Brian Walshe bringing up Karen Reed to help his case. How Trooper Michael Proctor could affect getting justice for Anna Walshe. And Karen Reed's got her own problems. The new special prosecutor, Hank Brennan, could be tipping the scales of justice in her homicide retrial. We'll talk about his advocacy and a fraternity pledge set on fire during a skit. Now 4 members pleading not guilty to felony charges. We'll talk about how do they fight such a hot button issue. And also this hour, we're being a voice for victims on a heartbreaking anniversary. Neziah Harris went missing 1 year ago today. We're talking about how long investigators realistically have in finding victims like Neziah. It's all coming up next for you, plus much more right here on Opening Statements. Good Thursday morning to you. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? It is that time, so go ahead, grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. Keep reaching, Brian Walshe. Yeah, keep reaching for any hope that you can find. My friends, have you heard? This guy is trying to get the judge to buy the argument that he's accused of murdering his wife, Anna, and dismembering her body because Trooper Michael Proctor is biased against him. That's what he's saying. He's saying that's why he's charged with this crime. This faulty logic is that Proctor had biased texts in his phone stating his opinion of defendant Karen Reed, so therefore he must be biased against Brian Walshe too, and other defendants as well. Let me be clear. I am in no way defending Michael Proctor for his unprofessionalism. He should not have been texting police business with his family or with his friends. That was wrong, and his comments were tasteless. But let's not forget that he never tampered with any evidence. Never. And that is what's most important, not his rude comments. So it seems to me that Brian Walshe is just looking for a Hail Mary to try to save himself from prison for the rest of his life if he's convicted of murdering Anna. You know, Brian Walshe must just think that all of the other damaging evidence against him that investigators found is somehow gonna poof, magically disappear if the judge thinks that Proctor is biased. I say, buckle up, Brian Walshe. Investigators didn't need to be biased against you in order to like you for this homicide. The trail of evidence, the massive trail of evidence they found both inside your house and outside of your house, gave them the only push that they needed to charge you with this crime. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. As you can see, I'm fired up about this case. We're going to talk about it more. But first, let me get you your daily docket.
I came up from behind her, and I jumped on her. I tackled her, and I stabbed her.
Do you know how many times you did it?
19.
In Wisconsin, we've got defendant Morgan Geyser in the Slender Man stabbing case. You remember her, right? Well, she wants to be released from the mental health institution where she's been incarcerated. Her 2-day release hearing starts up at 9 a.m. Eastern time, so we're going to go there live together when it begins. We also have testimony resuming in the case against defendant Victor Rivera. This is at 10 a.m. Eastern in New Hampshire. This guy is accused of killing his ex-girlfriend and her new boyfriend. And in Michigan, we've got defendant Jarvis Butts' preliminary hearing continuing this morning at 10 a.m. He is accused of murdering and sexually abusing 13-year-old Neziah Harris, who we're remembering this morning on this program. Now, let's get to our top story. As murder defendant Karen Reed was the focus in arguments for murder defendant Brian Walshe. So Walshe is accused of murdering his wife, Anna. Her death has been legally presumed after all of the evidence investigators found. She was last seen on January 1st of 2023 having dinner with her husband and with a friend. Her body never recovered. And during this hearing, the judge heard the defense's request to get documents relating to Trooper Michael Proctor. Because he's the investigator on this case, and we know he was also the lead investigator on Karen Reed's case.
Proctor and some of his colleagues have already specifically shown they are biased against defendants. To make an argument that they were only ever biased against Karen Reed is not logical. It's just not logical. And so I think that...
So are they biased is your argument they're biased as to all defendants?
I'm saying they're biased...
That they ultimately become a target of their investigation?
They're biased against Mr. Walshe.
Okay, so the judge asked the defense to be more specific. They said, return with a specific filing to provide specific details about what records you think are relevant to this bias you're alleging with Trooper Proctor. The filing deadline is going to be February 11th. The hearing will continue then on February 14th, Valentine's Day. Okay, so we'll see what happens for Brian Walshe then. Let's talk about it. Wow, what a power panel we have this morning for this case. Let's bring them in now. I want to welcome back to the show nationally known radio host and the creator and host of the show Road Patrol Live, John DePietro, private investigator, former Army intelligence officer and NYPD officer Manuel Gomez, and celebrity attorney. He does criminal defense work and civil work, attorney John Phillips. Good morning to you all. Can we start with just the story of this, please? John DePietro, can't think of a better storyteller than you. You've done this for many, many years, covered many criminal cases. You're in this area. What has this case done to the community? Would you speak to the impact of Anna Walshe's disappearance and the sentiment for justice for Anna, please?
Julie, this was just so horrifying. I was outside the house in Cohasset when they actually arrested Brian Walshe. But this was a situation, this guy, he had some charges pending against him that he had committed art fraud, that he had sold someone paintings that weren't legitimate. Anna Walshe was this enchanting, lovely young mother. She accepted and took a very high-profile real estate job in Washington, D.C. And so for a while, the arrangement was she would fly back and forth. And Cohasset is a beautiful area right on the South Shore. And then she finally came to a kind of a fork in the road. And I've spoken with some of her friends in D.C. who loved her. And she was beautiful and talented. And her plan was she was going to move her 3 young boys down with her to live in D.C. I spoke with the people that helped her decorate her townhouse in their rooms. But instead, when she mentioned that to Brian Walshe, he went off. And on New Year's night, as you've talked about, he took her life. It absolutely rocketed around the community. People were mortified. And now the goal of this guy to be in court trying to say it has something to do with Proctor, Julie, there's no way the judge is going to allow this.
John, I think you're absolutely right. And thank you for all of that context. We see the pictures and we get just a few facts, beautiful woman, successful in her career, a mother of 3 kids. And then when you hear just how devastating it was, it sickens you even more. And investigators knew that this guy lied. Manuel Gomez, this is where I want to go to you. So even though they haven't found her body yet, or any remnants of her body, because investigators believe, as you know, Manuel, that she was dismembered by him. That's what they believe happened. He lied about where she was, her transportation, where he was. The searches on his son's tablet, of all things, searching for dead bodies, smelling how to dispose of a dead body, all of it. Would you please speak to how you build an investigation like this one, Manuel, and if you think they've got Brian Walshe, regardless if they can ever bring Anna home?
Well, I like to say I think they got a rock solid case against him, that even if they have Officer Proctor come up biased or whatever, he's not going to win. Like you said, Julie, he researched on how to dispose of human remains. He also researched on the cleaning products. The cleaning products that he bought, some of those cleaning products actually destroy DNA evidence. And on top of that, he methodically put these garbage bags in trash bins, Julie, so that he knew that they were going to be taken away and incinerated. There's no doubt in my mind. And the fact that the places that they went to incinerate are between 1,500 and 2,000 degrees destroyed any possibility of getting DNA evidence. But I got to commend the prosecutor in this case, because now that they found a piece of bone, they're able to slice that bone and get into the bone marrow, which is the bone marrow is the soft tissue in that bone. And I think this is going to be one of the defining moments in this case. And this DNA evidence is going to be a slam dunk.
Wow, that gave me chills, Manuel, as you were saying that. Thank you for that insight. John Phillips, last but certainly not least, let's talk about legally what's going on with this guy, the criminal case he's got. Tremendous hot water this man is in, as you know. Could he also have civil liability as well? Tell us what you think. Assess Brian Walsh's legal difficulties, if you would, please, John.
You know, one of the most often cases that I bring, one of the cases I bring most often is a wrongful death case following a criminal investigation. And you don't often see it in spouse versus spouse that were currently married that were murdered, because there's insurance exclusions and exemptions, and then there's issues with how you can essentially recover. But if there's a murder, if there's a wrongful death, certainly it's an avenue you can pursue. I do want to dovetail on that last point about this DNA. You know, that's going to be a big issue in the case. And my understanding is it's such a small amount of DNA that they're worried about destructive testing. And we've had that in other cases where, you know, you have such a small sample that you're worried about the defense getting be able to test in future. Like the wrongful death attorneys get to test that too, because, you know, when you only have one bite at the apple, sometimes that's bad for the rest.
Oh, that's a really interesting point, John. So there could be some interest expressed from civil lawyers at this point, trying to say, wait a minute, let's make sure we're protected ahead in the months to come.
We've got that going on in the YNW Melly murder case, where the state did a download of some of the vehicle data. You know, you get this black box data, and then also there's a lot of data if you plug your phone into the system that syncs and GPS and information. But sometimes that data can only be downloaded once. And you want to make sure, whether you're the state or you're the civil side looking at it, that the entity that's downloading it does a good job and tries to preserve as much for kind of future investigations as possible.
Thank you so much for that, John. So this is really an important point. So we know Brian Walsh is kind of making this Hail Mary play with, Proctor was biased and said nasty things about Karen Reed, so I guess I must have some difficulty. But let's talk about the other things even more difficult. John DePietro, let me go back to you, please. Some of these facts. Using his child's iPad, some of the most disgusting evidence comes from that. Would you speak to that part of the story, please?
Yeah, that's amazing, Julie. And this is one of those situations where Brian Walsh, he thought he was going to be slick, but that was the first time when you think about Google searches, and this was in the early morning hours of New Year's. They had a dinner guest who left, and then prosecutors, police believe that's when Brian Walsh committed this heinous act towards his wife. But he used his child's iPad, and as you've kind of touched on, to look at, you know, how long before a body starts to decompose, how long before it smells, and how to get rid of something like that. He also ended up coming up with using a dumpster. And that's where, in fact, they have him riding to some of the dumpsters kind of near that area. But Julie, I want to touch on, and this is so important with the Proctor angle, so much has been made about Trooper Michael Proctor. But in the end, and this is so important, now Josh Levy, who did the investigation into Sandra Birchmore, that's how they got the Proctor text. He's leaving office. There was never a charge brought for conspiracy. So for all of the noise about Proctor, they never found texts where he was rigging or tainting any of the evidence in the Karen Reed case. So therefore, why I say that is, I think the judge is going to reject this outright. But make no mistake about it, Julie, Brian Walsh, the police, they have a solid case, whether it's the son's iPad, whether it was his movement, whether, you know, kind of the plan that was set in motion, what he did after that. Although they don't have the body, they seemingly have a lot more than just that.
Oh, you're exactly right. And thank you for that context, too, about Michael Proctor. And for anybody at home who may not recognize that name, Joshua Levy, who you mentioned, was the sitting U.S. attorney in the district where Karen Reed's case was taking place. And John, please correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people may not realize it was Karen Reed's defense team who provided Joshua Levy's office with only certain documents pertaining to the case and said, there's a cover-up, launch an investigation, please, there's a conspiracy. And that is how Joshua Levy's office was able to subpoena Proctor's phone records. Is that accurate, John?
That's exactly right. It really started with the Sandra Birchmore case, and they were right. And as a result of that, they thought, let's take another look at this. But in the end, they didn't find anything. No one was charged. And the reason why that's so important is because I think that's what the judge is going to rule on.
Yeah, no, this is really important. We're not done talking about Karen Reed's case. In fact, more of it's coming up next. I'm so glad you three are on the program. Stand by, please. Here's what's coming up on opening statements.
Those wounds were inflicted by a dog attack.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
What will happen to Karen Reed's defense theory now after the devastating cross-examination that we witnessed of the defense's proposed expert? Plus, we're remembering little Naziah Harris, 13 years old, disappeared exactly 1 year ago today.
How are we doing, guys? We're good? Okay.
You're on very shaky ground.
That is unreal.
People wanted answers, and people started locking their doors.
I did not do it to hurt anybody.
You know what it means. You know what you did, right?
Please hear me out. Please.
This was a real-life soap opera. And I said, OJ, everybody thinks you're guilty.
Now for what's trending in true crime, Judge Beverly Cannoni has yet to rule on whether a key witness for the defense's case in Karen Reed's trial will be allowed to testify this second go-around. The cross-examination of defense proposed expert Dr. Marie Russell has left a lot of doubt from many watching the case as to what could be next for Karen Reed and her attorney's quest to have the jury find her not guilty. Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan challenged the former ER doctor on her theory that these injuries on John O'Keefe's arm were caused by a dog bite from the family's dog at the Albert home, Chloe.
Did you ever discuss going to see Chloe and doing these studies on Chloe so you could see if they were dissimilar to these abrasions?
I was asked to evaluate the wounds.
Do you know that Chloe exists, that we provided notice to you, that we went up and saw Chloe and took molds? Did you know that?
Objection, Your Honor.
Do you see Karen Reed's reaction there? So her retrial is set to begin in April. Hank Brennan was on fire, and the doctor's performance has been described by many as shaky on the stand. So what will happen with the defense team, even if they get the ruling they want? Because, of course, they want her in. And look, she came in last time. She was qualified. The only time she's ever been qualified as a dog bite expert has been in the prior case for Karen Reed. So, you know, perhaps that'll allow her to come in again. But does the defense team really want to use her? Do they really want to keep up this theory? Let's talk about it. We have two sensational trial attorneys to help us work through that. Still with me, attorney John Phillips. I want to welcome into the conversation criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Michael J. Brown. Both of you, no stranger to high-profile cases. And after this hearing with Dr. Marie Russell, Michael J. Brown, tell me, if you're on that defense team, are you going to double down and go with this, or are you going to maybe rework your theory?
Good morning, Julie. Good question. She really did not hold up well at all in this Daubert hearing. So the issue then is for the defense is strategically, do they want to put her on as a witness, assuming the judge permits this evidence to trial, Or would they rather just cross-examine various prosecution witnesses like the detective, the crime scene people, the medical examiner, and elicit that type of testimony and create reasonable doubt as to whether or not this was caused by something other than the vehicle in question? Once you put witnesses on, you may lose some confidence in the jury if they come across in a poor fashion. And I watched this doctor testify, and quite frankly, I think you used the word shaky. I think you were being very kind and generous in that assessment. So you got to be careful about how you go forward. So yeah, I don't know if I would use it, quite frankly.
Maybe do some reconfiguring in that trial preparation room or wherever they work together. Michael, thank you for your insight. John Phillips, same question to you. What do you think this team is going to do now?
I tend to agree. We all remember the scientific method, and that's ultimately what the Dahlberg challenge is about. Let's find scientists and doctors and experts to opine on things that you can test. And they made a real big point, like, we had the dog. We had casts of the dog. We had all of this stuff that you could have tested, and it's just your opinion. And then, the prosecutors can extrapolate that to the whole defense case. And you see it coming down the tunnel. I would get far away from that freight train.
You're so right, John. I've got a clip. This is one of those moments that was kind of a mic drop moment for Hank Brennan. He's crossing her on how she didn't know that the pieces of Karen Reed's broken taillight were embedded in Officer John O'Keefe's clothing. Take a look.
And when you were considering that information, did you know from the criminalistics reports that shards of that broken taillight were littered in his sweater?
I did not know that.
When's the first time you learned of that?
Right now.
Ooh, Michael J. Brown, what did you think of that moment?
Yeah, it's not a good look for sure, Julie. But remember, let's remember, this is cross-examination. The issue at this hearing is whether or not the defense can offer this witness at trial. That's all that matters. And cross-examination is important even for that aspect. But a lot of the questions are geared more towards credibility. So the judge is going to have to make a decision about whether or not she'll permit even the introduction of this science. And again, it's certainly subject to cross-examination during the course of the trial, but it's just an initial preliminary stage. So there's a difference in the two. But nevertheless, the defense wants to have that opportunity and the option of introducing her. And then I think strategically they'll make that decision down the road.
Right. A great insight, Michael. Thank you for that. Let's turn to our other trending story now. So there are 4 members of a fraternity at San Diego State that find themselves now facing felony charges after a pledge was set on fire. 4 members of the Phi Kappa Phi fraternity are all charged with at least one felony crime earlier this week. Prosecutors are alleging that fire was set as part of a skit performed at a party last year, which caused third-degree burns covering 16% of the victim's body. All of these defendants have pleaded not guilty, and this isn't the first time this university has had trouble with its fraternities. According to the university website, several other problems have prompted investigations to come up, and at least a half dozen have been put on probation over the last 2 years. So this morning we're asking, is this behavior a fraternity problem or a university problem? Or both? John Phillips, to you first on this, please.
It's both. So I was in a fraternity back in the day, University of Alabama, no cell phones.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. And you can call it skits. It was also pre-Saban, so we didn't have as much to do. But you can call them skits all you want, but they're forced. They're hazing. And when you have a bunch of 18 to 24, 23-year-olds, a lot of alcohol, these things happen. They happen actually pretty commonly. We hear about one of these a year. And, certainly the alumni, the house chapter, the corporate entity that controls this house and this fraternity are exposed to liability. And depending upon how often the university has dealt with this, they are as well.
John, thank you for that. Great points. Michael J. Brown, your thoughts on who's got some responsibility here?
Yeah, certainly the fraternity does, Julie. This is a game of Russian roulette, and you have a bunch of kids, as John said, with alcohol. They're young. They make some stupid decisions, and most of the times things turn out okay. But that's not all right, because in these rare cases, when somebody has a significant injury or fatality, the claim that I didn't mean to hurt anybody or I didn't mean to cause that harm certainly just doesn't work in the criminal justice system, because it's like tantamount to standing on the overpass and throwing rocks off, saying, "Hey, I didn't mean to hurt anybody," but clearly your actions are likely to cause injury. So that recklessness is definitely subject to criminal prosecution.
I love that example. Great example. Michael, thank you for that. You're coming along with us. John Phillips, we've got to say goodbye to you. Thank you so much for your insight. And please keep us posted on the case you have with YNW Melly. Keep us posted on those developments if you would kindly, please. We'll see you soon. Take good care. Coming up next here on Opening Statements, we're talking about Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan. He is a heavy hitter in Boston, one of the best trial attorneys in the country, and he came out swinging. This was just at a Daubert hearing. What is he going to do at trial? We'll talk about it and what's tipping the scales. And this morning, we're being a voice for victims for Neziah Harris. This precious child was allegedly sexually abused and then murdered. And it was 1 year ago today that she disappeared.
But she was a beautiful child, just a beautiful child.
Save.
Welcome back to Opening Statements. 1 year ago today, 13-year-old Neziah Harris vanished after getting off her school bus. This morning, we're giving a voice to victims as her alleged killer is waiting to find out if he's headed to trial. I want to show you the last known photograph of beautiful Neziah. She was taken, this photo was taken at her school. This is located on Detroit's east side. This was on January 9th of last year. Now, phone records indicate that Neziah was pregnant with the defendant's baby. Yet Jarvis Butts, 41 years old, who dated Neziah's aunt, is charged with her murder, even though Neziah's body has never been found. Well, on Tuesday, a 9-year-old cousin testified that she saw Butts having sex with Neziah and another underage girl at his auto body shop, and that he tried to have sex with her when she was 8 years old, but she wouldn't let him. So no one thought it was strange that these young girls were spending so much time at his auto body shop. Let's talk about that.
Did you know Neziah to go to Mr. Butts' place of work to assist him with anything there?
Yes, there was a couple of times that she went with his daughter, and they went up there to go clean up at his shop.
And how would they get it? If you remember?
He would come and pick them up.
And was that in that white truck that you talked about earlier?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So prosecutors alleging here that she was murdered because she was pregnant and that the defendant was trying to find ways to get rid of the baby. That is the allegation. And this morning, we're waiting for both sides to come back to the courtroom. That preliminary hearing is going to continue, and then the judge will decide whether the case should be held for court. Let's bring in our guests and talk about this case. Still with me, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Michael J. Brown, and private investigator Manuel Gomez, also served in our military and served the NYPD. Manuel, let me start with you, please. Sweet Neziah missing for a year now, exactly a year today, as you know. As far as we can tell here at Court TV, there hasn't been a funeral for her, sadly. How long will investigators keep looking for her body, and at what point do you expect to see a declaration come from the court that she's dead?
Well, in a case like this, as we know, the statute of limitations for murder never ends. And they will look for this body because of the media attention that's involved, I would say, for at least another year or two, right? There's no doubt in my mind. And God willing, we'll have a relentless investigator, a detective, who will continue on until that child is found. But I just want to say that, this guy's MO was not a murderer. But there's no doubt in my mind that he killed this child because, as you said before, Julie, he was researching on how to do an abortion. And one of the things that he researched was drinking red antifreeze. Now, when you drink red antifreeze, that causes kidney failure and heart failure. So there is no doubt in my mind that this child is unfortunately dead. But this case raises another question, and that is, how many times can you commit sexual assault of a child before you get extensive jail time? This guy served jail time in 2004 for sexually assaulting a kid, and he's done it numerous other times. He should not have been in the street. This expert groomer, pedophile should have been incarcerated. Unfortunately, we need to strengthen our laws, and I hope in Harris's memory we get stricter laws for this.
Manuel, preach. I agree with everything you just said. Thank you for saying all of that. And such sharp analysis, too, where you said this isn't somebody who's looking to do a homicide. This was somebody looking for little girls, wasn't he? That his MO, police say, was that he would find women to date who had younger girls in their lives, whether it was a child or a niece or whatever the case may be. In Isaiah's case, she was the niece. And he would be in the home and creating that MO, Manuel. Is that exactly where you were thinking with this guy? He had an MO like for all these years and nobody stopped it, huh?
That's exactly correct. And the problem is that, again, he did not want to murder this child. He just wanted to commit an abortion and try to destroy the evidence. But the evidence is overwhelming. Even though we don't have the body, we will have a conviction because he is last seen with her after school. He's last seen with her at the body shop. And again, he took her to that hotel. Unfortunately, just like in the Brian Walshe case, I think he might have dismembered her and hit her in multiple locations because out of fear, that's what a guy like this would do.
Manuel, such great insight from you. Thank you for that. Let's continue and take it a step further. Assuming this is going to be a no-body case for those prosecutors. Michael J. Brown, I know you're a high-profile criminal defense attorney now, and when you started, you were a young prosecutor. And when you have a no-body case, I think it's hard sometimes for the public to even understand that you can be successful. Would you kind of walk us through how you can be successful and get a conviction when you have that big evidence lacking?
Sure, Julie. 30 years ago when I was a prosecutor, we didn't have the technology that we have now. So no-body cases, stepping back for a moment, of course, as a prosecutor, you want to have the body because forensically you can develop a lot of evidence from the body. But if you don't have it, with today's world, there's so many other ways in which you can gather evidence other than the body. We have computer searches, we have telephones where you can place the defendant at specific locations. You can get the pinging off his phones in regards to cell phone towers. And we talked about searches on the computer and the internet, which may show a motive and a strategy in terms of what they're looking to do. And of course, we have surveillance cameras everywhere you go, whether it's a gas station, whether it's a Home Depot, whether it's walking down Main Street in your local town. So what prosecutors will do is they'll look for this evidence and they'll put it together piece by piece with the hope that they can, absent the body, still develop enough evidence to put together this narrative in this story that they can prove to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. So again, without a body, you'd rather have it, but I don't think it's something that is an absolute necessity. You can still develop your case without having the body.
It is such great insight from you, Michael J. Brown. Thank you for that. You're able to come along with us. And Manuel Gomez, we have to say goodbye to you. Thank you for your expertise and insight. We'll see you soon. And before we go to break, my friends, we want to do what we like to do on this program, and that is put the focus on the victims. This morning, we're remembering beautiful Neziah Harris. She disappeared exactly 1 year ago today, and sadly, she's never had a funeral. She was a bright young child, beloved, and had her whole life ahead of her. We know she is deeply missed by her family and her friends. And as this case against the man accused of killing her progresses, Neziah Harris will never be forgotten. We'll be right back.
JonBenet is God. A two-night special report.
Exclusive video of the man who claims to be JonBenet Ramsey's killer.
Vinnie Politan investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
A Ponzi scheme and a deadly poisoning.
A former pharmacist already convicted in a federal fraud case
now stands trial for the murder of her husband.
The Ponzi scheme murder trial. Live coverage begins next week, only on Court TV.
I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Karen Reed is innocent.
We find ourselves deeply divided by fundamental differences in our opinions and state of mind.
We stand for the O'Keefe family. We stand for John O'Keefe. This is an abomination what's happening.
No matter how long it takes, no matter how long they keep trying, we will not stop fighting. We have no quit.
Karen Reed's defense team took a victory lap after last year's mistrial in her case. But the brand new specially appointed prosecutor trying her homicide case this time around could be tipping the scales of justice already. He is Whitey Bulger's former attorney. Attorney Hank Brennan, brought in by the Commonwealth to manage this case. He was just brought in last September. In the hearings that followed, Brennan's affect on the case was immediate, especially against dog bite expert Dr. Marie Russell. Let's take a look.
It involves a great deal of your subjective opinion based on your experience treating dog wounds, doesn't it?
You know, with all due respect, Mr. Brennan, I'm not somebody that just came in off the street. I saw something in the Boston Globe, and Mr. Brennan, I wasn't following the case at all.
They don't line up. They're not even. It's backwards.
It would be an odd configuration.
Well, odd. It would be like Ripley's Believe It or Not. The dog would have to have their teeth the opposite way.
Okay, so Hank Brennan was on fire in this hearing, no doubt about it. He is one of the best trial attorneys in the country. I made a prediction when 2025 started, and I said, the Karen Reed case is going to look very different this time around. Why? Because of Hank Brennan. Now, I want to show you his qualifications. So not only is he a very prominent criminal defense attorney, well known in Boston, known as one of the very best there, and he's garnered attention and awards and accolades all across the country. Look at this. He initially started his career serving as a prosecutor in 2 different counties. He's been named one of the country's top 100 trial lawyers. And as he was practicing in that Daubert hearing, I said to my colleagues as I was watching it, I said, his techniques are so good, he should teach trial advocacy. And we looked him up, and sure enough, he is a trial advocacy professor as well. And so he's been in the private sector doing criminal defense work in many high-profile cases for a long, long time. And he has a great reputation as well as being ethical and the consummate professional, somebody who knows the job and knows how to do it extremely well. So what's this mean for Karen Reed's case now that there's a new advocate at the helm? Let's talk about it. I want to bring in our guests. I have with me very high-profile criminal defense attorney Michael J. Brown. He's former prosecutor as well, and nationally known radio host and the creator of the show Road Patrol Live. Do yourself a favor, follow John DePietro on social media. John DePietro is with us this morning too. And John also sat in and watched Karen Reed's case, and I did a tremendous reporting on it from start to finish. And so, John, what do you think the Hank Brennan effect is going to be on this trial when it starts up in April?
Immense, Julie. He's already changed the complete dynamic. The area hasn't seen anyone this dialed in. He's like a surgeon. This dialed in, this focused, this type of impact. I would say since Tom Brady was lighting up the field at Gillette Stadium. And yesterday, or during the hearing, I should say this week, the Reed team, they look like Patriot fans this week. He is methodical. What I like the strategy that he's taking, and people need to understand this, he is a very successful criminal defense attorney. He wouldn't take this case if he didn't see it for what it is. But I like the strategy, and I asked him, how do you feel? He said, I feel focused. His strategy, the way I see it, is go after it's a hoax. It's a conspiracy. Go after it head on. And first up was Marie Russell. Julie, he tore through her like a chainsaw. And some of the parts of him asking her, did she know that the feds determined it wasn't dog bites? Is she still claiming he was clutching a glass while the dog was biting him. She's no expert. It was a joy to watch. It's completely changed the dynamic in the courtroom. Up next will be this foolishness of a Google search with Jen McCabe at 2:27. You watch. And he served notice to the defense that this is a new person in town. He's not, he has more time than Adam Lally. He has a different approach, obviously, than Adam Lally. But this was a completely different dynamic with Hank Brennan in the courtroom.
It sure was. I agree with everything you said, John. Thank you for that. And so I want to play a clip from this hearing. This is where he's questioning Dr. Russell about Officer John O'Keefe's injuries. And Chloe comes up here. Take a look.
Now that you know that Chloe's available, wouldn't those modes be helpful? Wouldn't you want to look at them and compare them to the distances on the abrasions on Mr. O'Keefe's arm?
Objection, Your Honor.
I don't think it's necessary for many reasons.
Okay, Michael J. Brown, help us unpack this, please. So Hank Brennan goes and actually has the team go and see Chloe. The defense team made a big deal about where's Chloe, tried to allege that the Commonwealth was somehow hiding the dog or alleging that the Alberts were hiding the dog. No. Hank Brennan paid Chloe a visit, gets mouth molds from this dog. And then when they say, hey, a court of law, let's introduce all this, and defense expert, you can look at them and do what you want and go visit Chloe on your own. And we see an objection from the defense team, and the doctor saying, I don't need to look. Michael J. Brown, did they just create a problem for themselves? And even just in that moment that the world saw, what do you think?
Well, Julie, you, myself, we love being prosecutors. So Hank Brennan, who was a prosecutor, we love when we're appointed special prosecutors because it was one of the best jobs we ever had. And we leave because for financial reasons often. So now you have a guy who can't wait to get back in the courtroom as a prosecutor, and you can see, and initially in the first trial, I think really the defense team overmatched the prosecution. That was clear. But now you have a guy coming in who really puts his food on the table for his family because of his cross-examination skills. And here it is. He's taking this expert witness, if you want to call her that, and beating her up point by point by point, where he's neutralizing her and even making her look ridiculous. So this is definitely going to be a case that's going to have a different tone for two reasons. One is obviously his trial skills are excellent compared to the prior prosecutor, but also because that whole conspiracy theory, I think, is now taken out. Yes, you can still allege the police were involved in it, but you no longer have the prosecution being involved in it because at the end of the day, he's a defense attorney who's a special prosecutor. So this is going to be an exciting trial, and I think you may very well see a different result.
Excellent points, Michael J. Brown, especially that last thing you said about how they've eliminated the idea that Adam Lally or any of the other attorneys could be in on this, conspiracy that they've alleged. The defense team has alleged that nothing has been substantiated or proven. Quite the opposite has been proven here. And so you're right. Hank Brennan has the power to get rid of this case if he comes in as a practicing defense attorney and goes, oh my gosh, police conspired and all this stuff. He could toss it. But the fact that he hasn't and he's laser focused saying it was a homicide by vehicle while DUI says a whole heck of a lot. We've got to leave it there for time's sake. Michael J. Brown, thank you so much. We'll see you back here very soon. John DePietro, thank you kindly. We'll see you back here soon.
Good to be with
appreciate you both so much. Take good care. All right, that's it for opening statements. Friends, you can watch the episode. Share it again if you want. Go to courttv.com. Put the episodes up there every single day for you. When we come back, we're looking ahead to Lori Vallow Daybell's hearing ahead of her upcoming trial where she's representing herself.